I think that everybody goes through this learning process, and first people, if I'd done this before March of 2020, they would have said you're out of your mind. But if you'd asked me about this in February of 2020, I would have said, why even asking me this? I wouldn't have even considered it. So I think that people weren't ready to embrace this idea before March of 2020. But after March of 2020, if you said, hey, I have an idea, I think everybody will work from home and we'll Zoom everywhere, and I'm going to try something new in my business, you would have said, well, there's a war on COVID. It's a difficult time. I guess you got to try new things. So I think that people became more open-minded after March. And we started from a point of view of open-mindedness. My board was open-minded, but it took them a while to get educated. And then with our outside investors, we didn't know how they would view it. We're a public company, so we took the safest course. We created a Dutch auction, and we said, we telegraphed what we're going to do. And we said, this is our strategy. If you don't like it, we'll buy you out. And we waited 20 days. And this, by the way, we offered the Dutch auction at 140 a share. The stock was trading 120. The stock traded between 130 and 140 for a while. People weren't sure the auction was going to go off. And then they came to their senses and they're like, wait a minute, the 140 is a put. The stock should be above 140. Then it traded above 140. And we didn't know whether we'd have 250 million tendered or nothing. And we only got 60 million tendered. So what that tells you is, at the end of the day, all but $60 million worth of the shareholders decided that they liked the strategy, or at least they would try it. And they tried it in the 150, and then the stock went to 160, and then it went to 180, and then it went to 200. And then around 220, I think Citron wrote some kind of report on Bitcoin. And then people started thinking that, well, maybe this wasn't a bad idea after all. This might start working. And if you ask the shareholders how they felt about it then, they would have given you a different answer than during the Dutch auction. Let me tell you, I met with 10 shareholders during the Dutch auction now on a standard investor conference. And I thought, I went into 9 of the 10 were positive, and I went into one meeting, and my head of investor relations said, this person's really not liking this strategy. He's asked a lot of questions about it, so get ready for a difficult meeting. And so I went in there all suited up for battle, and he said, tell me about Bitcoin. And I said, well, it's a digital monetary network, and we want to use it as a currency inflation hedge, blah, blah, blah. And this is technically why I like it. And he goes, oh yeah, I already know all that. I own Bitcoin. And I thought, well, why are you beating me up on this? And then he wasn't. And then I thought, why are my investor relations people telling me to be worried? And what I realized is Bitcoin is one of those things where everybody just kind of feels the need to ask the question, have you thought it through? And so this guy's asking the question so he can tell his investment committee that he did his due diligence. Right. And my investor relations people are asking the question so they can say they did their due diligence. And my lawyers and my lawyers' lawyers are asking questions so they could all check the box that they did due diligence. But when you poked, I got to tell you, I met so many people that after they said, how are you going to do it? How are you going to custody it? How you think? They're like, oh yeah, good idea. I own Bitcoin. And so I think the consumers figured it out, but getting the institutions around, it's like I met guys that bought $25 million worth of my stock or worth of my debt. And it was the first time they had the ability to buy a Bitcoin security, but they had been Bitcoin believers for years before. And so institutions come later to the game than the retail, just because there's more inertia.